Imagine your mind as a room you've been locked in for years. Over time, every corner has filled with noise, with blame, with alarms that go off for no reason. That's anxiety, an invisible prison no one else can see, but one you feel more strongly with each passing day. Here's the truth. Turning 50 or older doesn't shield you from anxiety. Sometimes it makes it worse. Because now, it's not just fear for yourself. It's fear for those who are gone, for the things you didn't do, for what you might still lose. And the world doesn't help. It demands calm while flooding you with uncertainty. It expects you to be okay when you can't even sleep through the night. Today, we're going to break out of that prison from the inside out. Not with empty phrases or magazine advice, but with 9 Stoic lessons that can transform the way you think, feel, and move through life from this moment on. Each lesson is a door you can choose to open. And I promise you this, the last one isn't just the most powerful, it could be your new beginning. My name is Gabriel. Stay with me because this video isn't just a message, it's a complete path toward the peace of mind you truly deserve. Have you ever found yourself feeling afraid without knowing exactly what you're afraid of? It's not a clear fear, not something you can name precisely. It's more like a shadow settling in your chest, tightening without reason, turning even peaceful days into constant watchfulness. At 55, 60, or beyond, you'd expect to have found some peace. But often, the opposite happens. Your body slows down, certainties fade, and instead of serenity, a relentless unease takes over. A quiet anxiety that doesn't scream, but eats away at you. This is the first point in the video, and it has a clear name. Recognize fear as an echo, not as truth. Because what you're feeling, that inner trembling you sometimes hide behind busy work or silence, isn't always telling you the truth. Most of the time, it's just replaying old stories your mind learned long ago, that you must stay alert, that something bad could happen, that you're never enough, that you have to anticipate every possible scenario to avoid pain. And without realizing it, you live inside that echo. An echo that sounds just like reality, but isn't. Let me tell you something. A few years ago, I met a woman named Linda. She was 68, and on the surface, her life seemed settled. A decent pension, a home of her own, independence. But she confessed that she lived in constant fear that it could all disappear. Every time she went to the grocery store, she triple-checked prices, even though she could afford them. Every time her son took a bit longer to reply, she imagined the worst. Every minor symptom made her think of serious illness. She lived in a state of constant alert, as if everything could collapse at any moment. I asked her, "What do you think you're trying to prevent with all that control?" She looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, "I feel like if I let my guard down, something terrible will happen." But nothing terrible ever did. What did happen was her life, passing her by, without her being able to enjoy it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we shouldn't be carried away by images of fear, because they show us more than what could actually happen. Fear is creative. It makes you see danger where there are opportunities. It convinces you that the past will repeat itself. And when you've been betrayed, when you've lost, when you've been forgotten by those you loved most, it's understandable that fear tries to protect you. But it doesn't always protect. Sometimes it traps. The problem is, you've learned to trust fear more than your own ability to respond. Every time something worries you, your mind looks for a past story to justify the fear. It's like an echo deep in your consciousness saying, "You saw what happened once, it could happen again." But that's not truth. That's a conditioned response, a mental habit you can break if you choose to observe it clearly. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell you to ignore your fears. It tells you to examine them, to put them in front of you like objects, to ask, Is what I'm feeling coming from what's actually happening or from what I imagine might happen? When you start making that distinction, you take your power back. You're no longer a victim of the echo. You're the one choosing which voice to listen to. Linda understood this after a lot of reflection. She told me, "I've spent more time fearing what never happened than celebrating what I actually have." That hit me hard. Because how many of you live the same way, with your house in order, food on the table, and your soul still trembling over something that hasn't even happened? Recognizing fear as an echo doesn't mean denying your story. It means knowing you don't have to stay trapped in it. It means looking at the present and saying, "Today, what I have is enough. Today, there's no real danger. Today, I can breathe without being on guard." Anxiety isn't a sign that something bad is happening. It's a sign that something inside you hasn't been clearly heard, and that something is often the need to trust yourself again. Your ability to stand tall, to adapt, to face whatever comes with dignity. Because you've done it before. Because you're still here. And that more than any echo is a solid truth. But this doesn't end here. What's coming in the next point will challenge one of the most common traps that feed your anxiety without you even noticing. So stay with me. We're going deeper. If you understood what we talked about in the first point, then you already know that much of the anxiety we carry doesn't come from the present. It comes from an inner echo, repeating old warnings. But there's something else, just as powerful, that keeps that anxiety alive and feeds it every day without you realizing it. It's not enough to identify your fears if you're still trying to control everything around you. That's why we've reached the second key point in this video. Let go of the illusion of absolute control. This is one of the greatest challenges for a mature woman who spent her life holding her family together, working tirelessly, staying alert for decades. When you've spent a lifetime solving, anticipating, and holding things together, it makes sense that your mind equates control with safety. It's as if something inside you says, if I'm not in charge, everything could fall apart. But what feels like strength is often a trap, because absolute control doesn't exist, and living as if it does is a quiet form of torture. Seneca said that fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. It may sound harsh, but it holds deep wisdom. The more you resist accepting that not everything is in your hands, the more suffering you create. The urge to control yourself, others, the future, even death, is an exhausting illusion. It wears you down. It makes you rigid. And worst of all, it often turns you into the enemy of your own peace. Because you can't rest if you believe everything must first go through your approval. This doesn't mean giving up or living in indifference. It means learning the art of distinguishing what's within your influence and what's not. Epictetus explained it clearly. Some things depend on you, your thoughts, your actions, your choices. Others don't, what others say, the health of your loved ones, the course of time. And yet, we live the other way around. We obsess over the external and neglect the internal. We worry when someone doesn't call, when our children make decisions we disapprove of, when money disappears faster than it comes in. But none of that is fully under our control, and yet we let it steal our peace. I remember Rosa, a 71-year-old mother of 3 adult children. She told me, "Gabriel, I can't stop worrying. One of them won't talk to me, another lives far away, and the youngest makes choices that break my heart. I feel like if I don't stay on top of everything, it'll all fall apart." I asked if that had changed anything. She went quiet, then admitted, "Nothing, except now I'm the one who can't sleep." Rosa had confused love with surveillance. She thought being constantly alert was the same as caring. But caring is also letting go. It's trusting. It's accepting that others have their own path, and you weren't meant to carry everyone's destiny. When you live with the illusion of control, you lose the joy of the present. You're so focused on preventing disaster that you miss what's actually working. And that tension shows in a body that can't relax, a mind that won't stop, emotions that overflow at the smallest things. Women who've been the backbone of their families often grow older, believing that if they let go, everything will fall apart. But collapse doesn't come from letting go. It comes from clinging to the impossible. Spiritually, there's a clear message too. If you believe in God, in life, or in something greater, then you know not everything depends on you. There's a larger rhythm, a wisdom that moves even when you don't see immediate results. And yet many live as if they were solely responsible for the entire universe. Where does your faith go then? Where is your trust in that bigger order that has held things together even when you couldn't? Learning to let go isn't weakness, it's humility. It's recognizing that your power is great, but not infinite. That you can love without controlling, support without invading, be present without manipulating. And when you do that, you don't just free yourself, you free others to take responsibility for their own lives. If this point resonates with you, if you see yourself in that constant tension of trying to make everything go right, I invite you to look honestly. How many things have you been carrying that you could have let go of years ago? How much of your anxiety comes not from what's happening, but from what you refuse to release? The peace you're looking for doesn't arrive when everything is under control. It comes when you stop fighting what isn't yours to manage. That's one of the hardest truths to accept, but also one of the most liberating. And if you stay with me, the next point will address an even deeper wound, the feeling that you're only valuable when you're being useful. It's a subtle trap, but a very common one. So don't go anywhere. We're going further. If you've come to understand that not everything can be controlled, you're already one step closer to peace. But there's something even deeper that keeps that peace from truly settling in. It's not about what you do, it's about what you believe gives you worth. We've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things begin to shift. Redefine your worth beyond your usefulness. Because if you live convinced that you only deserve love, respect, or attention when you're fixing, serving, or producing, then every time you're unable to do something, you feel like you disappear. And over time, that turns into a quiet, persistent anxiety that follows you even in moments of rest and keeps you from enjoying life, even when everything seems fine. This is a learned mistake. From a young age, many women were trained to please, to be available, to say yes, even when their bodies were screaming no. In youth, that looks like energy. In adulthood, it turns into exhaustion. And in old age, it becomes a feeling of being disposable. Because when you can't hold up what you once held, when the kids don't call, when no one asks how you're doing, a quiet voice starts to whisper, "I'm no longer needed." And if you believe that, anxiety becomes your new identity. It greets you in the morning. It lurks when you're doing nothing. It blames you for resting, for saying no, for needing help. It's an invisible prison, but it's very real. The strategy here is simple. You need to start seeing yourself as valuable simply because you exist. And I know that's not easy. The mind always wants proof, some justification. But Stoic philosophy teaches that dignity isn't earned through achievements or lost with age, it's recognized. Epictetus said, "It's not what you have, but how you use it that defines your character." And the same goes for your time, your energy, your presence. You don't need to be producing to be valuable. Your presence, your voice, your gaze, your experience, all of that carries a weight that can't be measured in completed tasks. Imagine a tree in autumn. Its leaves fall, its outer activity slows, but its essence remains unchanged. No one looks at that tree and thinks it has stopped being a tree. We understand it's in a different phase. The same goes for you. You're not any less alive for not doing what you once did. You're in another stage, one where your worth is no longer tied to how much you do, but to how much you've learned, how you choose to live, how much truth you can hold in silence. Here's a simple practice you can start today. Every time you feel guilty for doing nothing, say it out loud and change the phrase. Don't say, "I didn't do anything." Say, "Today, I gave myself space to exist." Don't say, "I'm no longer useful." Say, "Now, I bring value from a different place." That shift isn't symbolic, it's radical, because what you repeat to yourself every day becomes the way you live. If this message is resonating with you, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. We're not here to entertain, we're here to give you tools to take your life back with both hands. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and if this point speaks to you, write the phrase, "My worth doesn't depend on my usefulness," because that affirmation could be the first step in freeing yourself from a burden that was never really yours to carry. Stay with me until the end. There are still powerful lessons ahead, and the last one might be the most transformative of all. We're taking it step by step. There's still much to say. If you've started to separate your worth from your usefulness, then you've also begun to reclaim something the system took from you without asking. Your right to exist without needing to justify it. But even after taking that step, there's a quieter trap still lurking, one that seems harmless but quietly sabotages your mental clarity every single day. We've reached the fourth point in this video. Stop seeking peace where there's only noise. Many women, especially after 55, feel an emptiness they try to fill without knowing how. They scroll through social media, surround themselves with people who subtly criticize them, consume news that only breeds anxiety, or hold on to relationships that no longer bring warmth, only constant tension. And deep down, they do all this because they want to feel connected to something, to feel less alone, to find some calm out there. But what they find isn't peace, it's noise. Persistent noise disguised as company, relevance, distraction. It's like drinking salt water. It feels like it quenches your thirst, but only makes you thirstier. This mistake is so common that most don't even notice it. We've normalized living surrounded by stimulation, messages, demands, and other people's drama so much that the idea of sitting in silence feels absurd. But that silence is where real inner work begins. The problem is, we've been taught to fear it. You were made to believe that if you stopped, you'd feel useless, that if you didn't reply quickly, you were a bad friend, that if you weren't available, you were selfish. So you filled your space with noise, soulless conversations, borrowed worries, images that trigger comparison, promises that leave you empty. And meanwhile, your soul was left out, quiet, waiting for you to remember it also has a voice. The consequences of living in that noise are devastating. It keeps you from thinking clearly. It silences your intuition. It makes you more reactive and less aware. And worst of all, it robs you of your ability to discern. You no longer know if what you're feeling is really yours or if you're just echoing what's around you. You don't know if your desires are truly yours or something you copied without realizing. That confusion creates one of the most fertile grounds for anxiety. Because when you don't know what you really think, anything external can take control of you. Stoicism doesn't just teach acceptance of what you can't control, it teaches you to guard your mind like a temple. Marcus Aurelius wrote that tranquility comes when you stop caring about what others say or do and turn your gaze inward to your own soul. But that's impossible if your mind is filled with noise. You need to make space. You need to choose with intention what you allow into your inner home. Because not everything that entertains nourishes. Not everything that informs uplifts. Not everything that keeps you company is good for you. The invitation here isn't to isolate yourself, it's to cleanse, to be selective. to say firmly, "My peace is not for sale." If that means turning off the TV, stepping away from draining conversations, or unfollowing those who only spread fear, do it. Not out of rejection, but out of self-respect. Aging well isn't about retreat, it's about refinement. Giving your mind the silence it needs isn't a step backward, it's a return to yourself. And if this truth is making you uncomfortable right now, if something inside you is resisting, that's a sign the noise had already taken up too much space. But it's also a sign that you can still reclaim it, that there's still time to come home to yourself in serenity. In the next point, we'll talk about how serenity doesn't come from thoughts alone, but from habits, and how, when your body becomes your ally, it can completely transform your mind. Don't go anywhere. The deepest part is still ahead. If you've made it this far, then you already know that much of what disturbs your peace doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from what you allow to live inside you. But now, we need to talk about something even deeper, something that can't be resolved through reflection alone, but through embodied presence. We've reached the fifth point in this video. Make your body an ally, not an enemy. For decades, you were taught to use your body as a tool in service of others. You pushed it through endless workdays, through caregiving no one acknowledged, through long silences where your exhaustion had no name. And when your body began to ache, to slow down, to show signs of time, many looked at it with disdain, as if it no longer had value. But here's the trap. If you start seeing your own body as a burden, as something that gets in the way more than it helps, anxiety finds fertile ground. Because nothing breeds despair like feeling you can no longer inhabit yourself with dignity. The consequences of living disconnected from your body are serious. You begin to rely more on others, not just physically, but emotionally. You lose strength, not just in your muscles, but in your choices. Frustration sets in because every physical limit becomes a cruel reminder of what you can no longer do. And the most dangerous part, you lose self-respect. When you no longer recognize your body as a temple, you allow others to treat it as something disposable. You stop asking for care. You stop setting boundaries. You stop claiming your right to rest. You resign yourself to a decline that in many cases isn't inevitable, it's learned. But this can be reversed. Not with magic formulas, not with extreme diets or anti-aging promises. It starts with a decision to stop abandoning your body, to recognize it as the home you still live in, and to understand that every act of care you offer it is an act of love, not vanity. Stoicism doesn't idolize the body, but it respects it. Epictetus, who lived with a disability, said you should care for your body like you would care for a tool, not with obsession, but with intention. Because that tool is what lets you act, move, support yourself, and most importantly, feel. The mindset you need isn't one of a perfect body, but a present body. The body that walks, even if slowly. The body that breathes, even if it hurts sometimes. The body that stretches, that nourishes itself, that rests, not to please anyone, not to prove youth, but to remind yourself that you're still here. And as long as you're here, you can choose how to live. When you make your body an ally, your mind becomes more organized, your emotions settle, your self-esteem rises. Not because you look different, but because you treat yourself differently. There are women who've waited until serious illness to begin valuing their health. Don't make that mistake. Don't wait until the edge to reclaim what you can still preserve. Your body is not the enemy. It's the guardian of your dignity. And if you care for it with strength and respect, it will give something powerful in return, the feeling of being alive in every cell. In the next point, we'll talk about what happens when you choose to step into the unknown instead of retreating into the familiar. Because what you call safety is often just a cage in disguise. and breaking free from that cage can change the way you breathe. Stay with me. The truth hasn't finished speaking. If in the previous chapter I invited you to make peace with your body, it's because without that foundation, any attempt at serenity will eventually collapse. But now, we need to go further. Because even if you care for your body and tend to your mind, there's still something that will drag you down unless you face it with courage. The way you relate to the future. This is the 6th point in the video, and it can't wait any longer. Embrace uncertainty and choose curiosity over fear. Pause for a moment and picture this. You wake up one morning and for a moment, you don't know what day it is. There are no urgent tasks, no missed calls, no one relying on you to fix anything. It's just you, in silence, facing life. What do you do with that space? Do you fill it with plans, with worry? Or do you allow something new to unfold, something you haven't tried to control for decades? This isn't a fantasy. It's the reality many women face as they grow older. A new time, slower, more spacious, but also more uncertain. And if you don't know what to do with that emptiness, fear will take over. This isn't about denying that uncertainty is scary. Of course it is. It's frightening not to know what will happen with your health, your finances, your relationships. But what should scare you more is living every day as if it's a threat. Because that's what happens when your mind obsesses over preventing everything. You stop living. Stoicism doesn't promise you answers. It gives you tools to keep walking even when the path is unclear. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that life is made of change, and not resisting change is what allows the soul to stay at peace. But resisting is what we do all the time. We want nothing to change, not the distance between us and our children, not the wear on our bodies, not the loss of certainty. And when those things inevitably happen, we feel betrayed by life. What we don't realize is that this betrayal is an opportunity, an invitation to explore new paths, to discover that growing older is not a conclusion, it's a summit, a place where everything can be seen more clearly. But only if you're willing to look. Because the saddest thing isn't aging. The saddest thing is aging while clinging to what no longer serves you. Staying in the same routine with the same people, with the same complaints, just because you're afraid to try something new. That's not peace. That's resignation. And resignation is a slow way of dying while still alive. Many women in this community have shared that they spent years trapped in the idea that it was too late to change. Too late for what? To start a new habit? To walk away from a harmful relationship? To learn something new? The truth is, it's not too late. It's just hard. Because the unknown demands humility. And many would rather stick with a familiar pain than face a silence full of possibility. But that silence, that emptiness, that moment without answers, that is exactly where a new way of living can be born. If you choose curiosity over fear, imagine for a moment that you decide to walk without a map. That one day you wake up and say, "Today I'm going to do something I've never done before." It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be talking to someone new, changing your usual route, trying an activity you've never explored. That tiny decision can be the beginning of a profound inner shift. Because in stepping off the script, you unlock real freedom, the kind that no longer lets your past define you. Now here's the thing. If you don't make that move, life will do it for you. And it won't be gentle. It will push you with illness, with loss, with rupture. Not because it's cruel, but because life is pure change. And if you don't learn to move with it, it will hurt more than it has to. That's the cost of staying stuck. More suffering, less meaning. So today, I'll tell you without sugarcoating it. The unknown is not your enemy. What is the rigidity with which you cling to what has already expired. And if this idea makes you uncomfortable, if something in you resists, that means you need it. Stay with me. The final lesson isn't an ending. It's a beginning, and it may redefine the way you understand your place in the world. We're getting to the heart of it. Walk with me. If everything we've said so far has stirred something in you, if you've started to see how often fear of change has outweighed your desire to live in peace, then don't stop now. Because what comes next isn't easier, but it is clearer. This is the 7th point of the video, and I'll say it plainly. Make the present a refuge, not a battlefield. And while that might sound simple, it's probably the hardest thing you'll ever have to do if you truly want to turn your anxiety into serenity. Most people don't live in the present. They live in what didn't happen or in what might happen. They're arguing with old memories, justifying decisions from 20 years ago, or bracing for pain that hasn't even arrived. Every day they wake up with their minds full of emotional baggage, like soldiers preparing for a war that no one declared. The present becomes unbearable because it's flooded with 1,000 inner voices: guilt, pressure, expectation. And I don't say that as a metaphor. I say it because you know it. You've been there. On those days that look simple from the outside, but inside feel like a constant battle against thoughts that won't stop. Now think, what would happen if you decided your day doesn't begin with an alarm, but with a ritual of presence? It doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be as simple as placing your feet on the floor and telling yourself, I'm here. This is what I have, and this is what I'll live with today. It doesn't sound grand, but if you do it every day, it changes everything. Because in that small gesture, you're telling your mind that fear no longer runs your schedule. Your awareness does. And at this stage in life, that's a revolution. Of course, there's a quiet trap that sneaks in when you try to live in the present. The trap of, yes, I want to feel at peace, but my children, yes, I want to rest, but the economy, yes, I want to change, but I'm too old. That trap is called an excuse. And at this age, you don't have time to keep justifying why you're not doing what you know would do you good. Transformation doesn't come when the conditions are perfect. It comes when you stop negotiating with yourself. When you accept that the only real moment you have is now, and every second spent fighting it is a second lost. Let me say this with all the honesty it deserves. If you can't find refuge in your present, you are hurting yourself. And no one else can fix that for you. Don't wait for others to calm you, to value you, to return the peace you gave up by staying caught in what was or fearing what might be. This stage of life isn't about running anymore, it's about being. And if you can't be with yourself, don't expect the world to slow down to make room for you. Look at your life today, your home, your body, your routine. Look at what you have, not what's missing, not what you lost, not what you fear, what you have. And ask yourself, can I make this a livable place for my soul? If the answer is no, then begin. Without waiting, without handing it off to someone else, without self-pity. The present is your only guarantee. And if you don't make it your refuge, it will keep punishing you like a battlefield you built with your own thoughts. In the final chapter, we're going to talk about the deepest truth. Not about what you need to do, but how to start finding real meaning, even in the simplest things. Because in the end, it's not the grand life that brings peace, but the life that's honored in the details. Stay with me. The essential part is still to come. If the previous chapter helped you see that the present can be your only true refuge, then you already know there's no more time to waste on meaningless inner battles. But there's something else you need to understand in order for that refuge to become livable, so it doesn't turn into a space once again invaded by doubt, old narratives, and voices that aren't truly yours. That brings us to the 8th point of this video. Be the owner of your thoughts, not a guest of your fears. You might think your thoughts are inevitable, that they show up on their own, settle in without asking, but that's only part of the truth. Because while you can't always control what appears in your mind, You can choose how long it stays, how much power it gets, how much space you give it. The problem is, most people live as if their mind were a house anyone can walk into, offering opinions, shouting, making a mess, and leaving without consequence. And little by little, your thoughts stop being your own. They become filled with borrowed phrases, external judgments, inherited fears, and you become a guest inside your own consciousness. If you've ever caught yourself speaking harshly to yourself, saying things like, "I'm no good," "this isn't for me," or "no one really cares how I feel," then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those thoughts didn't originate from you. They were planted, absorbed, repeated so many times that now you think they're true. But they're not. They're mental structures you can dismantle if you're willing to observe them with clarity. The first step is simple but powerful. When a limiting thought shows up, don't accept it as automatically true. Ask yourself, would someone who loves me say this? Would someone who wants peace believe this? If the answer is no, don't let it stay. Don't feed it. Don't embrace it. Here's a concrete action you can start today. Each morning, as soon as you wake up, write down a single sentence that reminds you you're in charge of your mind. It doesn't have to be profound. It could be something like, "Today I choose to think clearly," or "Not everything I think is true." Do it even if you don't fully feel it yet. Because it's not about instant belief. It's about training your mind to recognize that you hold the keys again. It's like reclaiming a home you didn't even know had been taken from you. But here comes the hardest part: consistency. A single sentence isn't enough. You need a firm mindset, a daily decision not to be a prisoner of your darkest thoughts. And that takes courage. Because sometimes it's easier to live from fear, from complaint, from repetition. It gives you excuses. It lets you say, "That's just how I am," and avoid the effort of change. But comfort doesn't bring peace. It brings stagnation. And you didn't come this far to get stuck. Let me be blunt. If you don't take responsibility for your thoughts, someone else will do it for you. Society, the media, your unhealed wounds. And if that happens, you'll lose the most valuable thing you have, your inner freedom. Not the kind that depends on your body or your money or your age. The kind that depends on your ability to decide which voice you'll listen to inside your mind. Because every thought you choose to believe becomes the seed of the life you'll live tomorrow. And if you keep believing everything fear tells you, you'll keep living from that fear, as if it were the only reality. But it's not the only reality. You can choose another narrative, one that respects you, one that strengthens you, one that gives you back the right to be fully yourself with no excuses. The choice is yours. No one else can make it for you. And if you've made it this far, there's no turning back now. Stay with me, because what comes next is the final piece of this journey, the simplest lesson, but also the most transformative. That's where the circle closes. That's where true peace begins. I'll see you there. If you've made it this far, you know that real change isn't a light decision. It's a break from decades of thinking, acting, and justifying your pain as if it were just part of the landscape. And the hardest part isn't realizing you need to change. The hardest part is staying committed to that transformation when the past calls you back, when habit seduces you, when excuses start sounding like common sense. Now we've arrived at the ninth and final point of this journey, and its name couldn't be clearer. Be grateful without idolizing, accept without surrendering. This is where many get stuck, because they confuse gratitude with resignation. They think being thankful for what they have means they shouldn't ask for more, shouldn't expect more, shouldn't hope for anything different. And they convince themselves with lines like, "I'm fine like this," while deep down, there's a thirst that hasn't been quenched, a restlessness that won't let them settle. But true gratitude isn't a stopping point, it's a starting one. It's not saying, "This is all I deserve." It's saying, this is what I have today, and from here, I choose to keep walking. If you don't understand that difference, you'll end up using gratitude as a prison, one decorated with beautiful phrases. And there's no more dangerous prison than the one that makes you believe you must settle in order to appear wise. Then there's the other extreme, those who accept everything as if they had no voice, as if saying, I don't want this anymore, were an act of arrogance. You were taught that to accept is to give up, that being spiritual means enduring, that maturity is about staying quiet. But that's not acceptance. That's surrender disguised as virtue. Real acceptance is seeing reality for what it is, without drama, without embellishment, and choosing what you'll do with it. Acceptance doesn't mean bowing your head. It means lifting your gaze and saying, this is happening, and still, I choose to live with dignity. This is where the most common excuses show up. At my age, what's the point? I don't want to bother anyone. God must have a reason for this. No, that's not faith. That's fear. That's exhaustion turned into belief. Because when an older woman begins to move, to claim her space, to seek joy, to set boundaries, the world looks at her strangely. And many choose to stay still just to avoid that judgment. But the price is high. You pay with your life, with your hours, with your silence. And if you don't claim that space, no one's going to hand it to you as a gift. Take a brutally honest look. How many times have you said you were at peace when you had simply given up? How many times have you said thank you for something you didn't want anymore just to avoid seeming ungrateful? How many times have you accepted pain, convinced there was no other option? The answer lives in your body, in your breath, in your mood, in your loneliness. You don't have to say it out loud, just feel what you've been postponing because you're afraid to break that image of the woman who can take it all. So today, let me say this without sugarcoating it. You can be grateful for what you have without giving up on wanting something better. You can accept what you can't change without surrendering to what you still can transform. You can live in peace without betraying yourself. But to do that, you must stop protecting the idea that there's nothing left to do. Because that idea isn't humility, it's exhaustion. It's an illusion. And you didn't come this far to slowly fade into a role that no longer reflects who you are. The final decision is this. Will you keep being grateful like someone begging, or like someone standing tall? Will you accept like someone who disappears, or like someone who honors herself? This is the moment, not for grand gestures, but for small daily acts that restore your respect, your desire, your voice, because if you don't do it, no one else will. This is the end of the road, but it can also be the beginning of a new life if you choose it. Getting here wasn't a small act. If you're hearing these words, it's because you chose to stay, to face what many would rather avoid, and not to numb yourself with comforting speeches or false hope. What we've explored today isn't consolation. It's a confrontation with reality. And you chose not to turn away. That already sets you apart, because most people continue living from fear, from autopilot, from the belief that the time they have left isn't worth discomfort. But not you. You chose to hear truths that unsettle, and that, whether it feels like it or not, is already a form of healing. This video didn't come to solve your life. It came to show you that you have more power than you've been told. That your age isn't a sentence, it's a turning point. That your body, your mind, and your soul owe nothing to anyone. And that your serenity isn't a luxury, it's your right. What you do with everything you've heard is your responsibility. No one else can make that choice for you. But if you truly want this reflection to leave a mark on your life, write it in the comments. Type the phrase, "I choose truth over fear," and tell me what country you're listening from. Because that simple phrase, when spoken with awareness, can be the beginning of an entirely different life. My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not a therapist. I'm a voice that chose to speak clearly and respectfully to those who've lived a lot, but who still haven't fully awakened. This channel exists because too many people are growing old in silence, carrying guilt, fear, and wounds no one talks about. And because someone had to say, "That's not fair, that's not inevitable." Here we speak with honesty. Here we honor maturity. Here we don't pretend everything is fine, but we also refuse to accept that it has to stay the same. If this video stirred something in you, subscribe now. Not to be just another number, but to be part of a community that isn't here to be entertained, but to choose. Share this content with someone you know needs it, because sometimes a single phrase spoken at the right moment can shake off years of resignation. And if this message touched you today, don't let it fade. The conversation doesn't end here. On the screen, you'll see 2 more videos I invite you to explore. Don't leave in silence. Keep walking, because as long as you're alive, there's a truth waiting for you, just on the other side of fear. I'll see you soon. Take care, and remember, your peace is not for sale.